The time is just gone, 8:34 a.m. on News and Views this morning. Now, looking at SARS, the South African Revenue Services, particularly at a time when tax returns have been submitted by individuals by the end of October. And we know it's been a tough year. It's been a very, very difficult year. But many who have submitted their tax returns and are awaiting a refund. Now, we've heard in many instances where people have been waiting for a very, very long time for their refunds. And the question that is asked is, does SARS have the money? And this morning, we're talking with Simon Weber, and he is a tax associate at ENSAfrica, talking about this piece that he has co-authored with Andries Meiberg regarding points to consider when South African Revenue Services owes you a refund. Simon, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, NIS. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, now, Simon, we know that we've heard in a number of instances, and I deal with a lot of people as well, with regards to SARS, and particularly when it comes to refunding. We know when you owe SARS money, they give you a deadline. It's got to be paid by a certain date. It doesn't get paid. You get lumped with interest and penalties and all sorts of things. But at this point in time, we know it's been a difficult economic climate. It's been a tough year. Revenue collections have been down. But people have expectations, and legitimately, when they are being owed money, they must be paid.
Absolutely. I guess it's exactly like you say. When you are owing any amounts to SARS, they'll be quick to be knocking on your door. But it seems that there's a lot of taxpayers out there that are waiting refunds from SARS. I guess you mentioned income tax. We know that there are a couple of individuals waiting for it, but I guess it's become much more prevalent for corporate taxpayers in the context of value-added tax. Recently there was a matter in the Johannesburg High Court where the taxpayer was owed over 1.6 billion rand in VAT. So you can imagine in a year such as this, 1.6 billion has a massive impact on your business.
Exactly. And I think the key issue here is, irrespective of which tax type we're talking about, whether we're talking about VAT or we're talking about income tax, and if we just focus a bit on income tax, for instance, when you look at individuals, SARS has now got the facility where they draw a lot of the information directly, whether we're talking about retirement annuities, we're talking about medical aids, we're talking about your IRP5s. And it does appear as if they seem to be stalling because you've got all this information already, and yet when there is a refund, you're asking the taxpayer to submit supporting documentation. What more does a taxpayer actually do in terms of submission of other documentation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess, like you said, the process has become very automated. I guess we also have the automated assessments now for income tax, where it's become very simple. They gather the information from the banks and from the medical aid. So it is difficult, and understandably frustrating. But we would caution, we would say that taxpayers need to engage with SARS. They would need to follow SARS and find out what exactly it is that they want, why it is that they want it. And that process can be frustrating, but unfortunately, it is something that you need to do. Obviously, where those options have run out and SARS is just not coming to the party, then we can maybe consider litigation. Obviously, there's lots of things that need to be taken into account for that. And one is, the cost of litigation can sometimes be staggering and not worth going to court for whatever. But always try and engage with SARS, try and phone the hotline, try and really understand. Sometimes it might be something very simple that can be sorted out over the phone.
Now, also, Simon, what sometimes we tend to forget is there are laws that govern SARS as well, particularly when we're looking at the Tax Administration Act, and where SARS is basically obliged by legislation to pay out refunds together with even interest in the event of delays when it comes to refunds, and when it is clearly found that at the end of the day, SARS has been possibly negligent in making the payment or have withheld payment without any valid reason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the
Sorry,
Is the
Simon, if you could
review.
just move around slightly, please. We are losing a bit of a, because of possibly a bad signal.
It's just give me a second. Is that better?
Yeah, much better, Simon. Yes.
Okay. But the Tax Administration Act is very prescriptive. I mean, it's unequivocal. It says that a refund must be paid where it is due. So that is a very, very important right that is contained in the Tax Administration Act. Obviously, it is subject to certain further other provisions, but it is a very important right, and taxpayers should definitely make sure that they ensure that they enforce that right by whatever means that is necessary.
Now, just looking at some of the key issues, and you've written this piece in terms of some considerations that taxpayers need to make, particularly the 5 points that you referred to, where taxpayers must consider when SARS owes them a refund. What are some of the key issues here, Simon?
So the key issues are, the first one is that SARS is allowed to conduct an audit of the refund. So there we're talking specifically about the amounts, just to check that the amounts are correct and where they stem from. We're not talking about a general or a very wide audit, something that we've seen SARS maybe overstep very recently. The second one is that refund can prescribe, meaning that if it's not claimed within certain periods and it stems from an erroneous overpayment, it'll never become it'll be deemed to be a payment to the benefit of the state, so it will never become recoverable again from the South African Revenue Service. And then when a taxpayer tenders security for the amount, SARS has to pay that refund if security has been tendered. And the last one is that if there are, especially in the context of corporate taxpayers, if there are outstanding returns and tax amounts on other accounts, so say you are owed a value-added tax refund, but you haven't submitted your income tax return, then SARS will very likely withhold that refund until all taxes have been settled and all your tax affairs are in order.
All right. And just finally, Simon, just in terms of recourse, now I know you speak about, there is the litigation option. Are there any other inexpensive ways where, SARS or taxpayers could engage with SARS to try and get their problems resolved in the event of, them basically coming up against a brick wall or battling to resolve a particular issue?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like I said, try and engage with SARS. Sometimes you might not get the help that you need on the hotline, but if that doesn't really come to fruition and it doesn't result in anything, the next step would be to lodge a complaint, and then from there on out to go to the tax ombud. Sometimes the tax ombud can be seen as a bit of a toothless entity, but if you read its reports, it relative to the fact that it has in past instances really helped taxpayers to get their refunds from SARS. So there is definitely that option. I mean, that will be free of charge, but it might be a bit of a frustrating avenue to follow, but it is definitely available to taxpayers.
Well, Simon, thank you very much for that and for your time with us this morning. We wish you all the best.
Same to you and to the listeners. Cheers.
Simon Weber joining us this morning. And as we mentioned, it's been a very, very difficult year. And I know there are many taxpayers that are expecting long outstanding refunds. It is the time of the year where the money is needed. It's needed very, very badly. Many people look forward to the refund at the end of the year for various reasons, whether they're going away, whether they need it just for something extra in the home, whether it's for the education of the kids, school fees, and the like as well. And this is the general sentiment at this point in time, that SARS is withholding refunds. And are they just basically looking for excuses? Because we've seen cases where here's this constant request coming through from SARS to submit documentation, and these documentations all electronically pulled out now. They've got access to banks, they've got access to medical aids, they've got access to investment companies for retirement annuities. So they have all the information, and what more do they expect taxpayers to basically submit when you've got the information already? And again, the sentiment here is this is a stalling tactic. It's a delay tactic, because at the end of the day, does SARS have the money? And we've heard even earlier this year where SARS boasting of the fact that they had paid out 2.4 billion in refunds to taxpayers, saying that this was a major cash injection into the economy at a very critical period. And we are right now in a very, very critical period. And we've seen huge complaints already, 2018, 2019 financial year, where many complaints have been received by the tax ombudsman relating to delayed refunds. And this is the second highest number of complaints that have hit the office of the tax ombudsman. The time is just gone, 8:44. We come back, we'll be talking with Itiquini Secure, looking at COVID-19 and how do we manage this second wave.
Osman's Taj Mahal Spice and Rice. For over 80 years, Osman's Taj Mahal have been perfecting the art of the perfect blend of spices, pure, aromatic, and well-seasoned. Spices to tantalize your taste buds. From creative cuisines to gastronomical gourmet goodies. From exotic odors to traditional dishes, Osman's Taj Mahal have remained synonymous with